Hello everyone and welcome back to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I promised in the title on this video that I was going to show you a little something different, and this is really different. What you are looking at is not a vintage sewing machine. Your eyes do not deceive you. You are looking at a vintage stand mixer. And I'll explain why you're seeing this here. The first thing I should mention is that the name of my channel is still the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. That's not going to change. And I'm not changing the channel. I'm not going to start introducing new items. If I do that, I may have to create a different channel for this. But I'm showing you this today because I actually have a bigger purpose than simply talking about this vintage stand mixer and the project that I hope to explore in getting it overhauled. But there's a greater reason for that, and it is simply this. Many of you who watch my channel, some of you are looking for information on vintage sewing machines because you want to purchase one. Others of you are, maybe you've already tinkered with vintage sewing machines and you want to tinker more, or you want to learn more about them. And then some of you are new. Maybe you bought a vintage machine and you thought it worked, and you found out, oh, it's not really working right. Something's going on. Maybe it was clean, maybe it was pretty, but it has not been serviced. And the seller said, well, it runs good, you know, needle goes up and down. And you saw it and you bought it. And I bought machines like that myself, so don't feel bad if you did. And you get it home and you realize, oh crap, this is a cool machine. Why is it not running? Should I keep it? What should I do with it? Can I take it somewhere for service? So let's say you do, and you take it down to your local sewing vacuum store. If you're lucky, you may find someone who can service it for you. Many times, though, that's not always the case. And you will be told, oh, we can't get parts for those. We don't service those anymore. And, you know, all of us are in a world that's very different from the world our grandparents knew. There was a time when you would see in any town or city a number of businesses that were, their basic purpose was appliance repair, but I'm not talking about larger appliances. It was small appliance repair. Maybe it was TV and radio, right? Or appliance and TV repair. And you would take it there and they would service your machine, or they would fix it because they could get parts for it. And these businesses would work on all sorts of brands. Today, there are a few places left that do this type of work. There are actually a few places that even do TV repair, if you can believe that. And again, it makes sense why you can't find many of these places anymore, because there are very few consumer items that people have other than the vintage ones, but the new ones are not designed to be serviced. Now they say, oh yeah, for warranty work, you contact us here and you can send this off. We all know that they don't want us to do that, and they do everything to discourage us. They'll quote you prices to overhaul, or maybe a price for a part that costs more than buying a whole new replacement for the thing that's broken. We know how this works, right? It's planned obsolescence. It's been around for a while. It has really gotten horribly bad in the last 20, 30 years, but it started after the Second World War, right? We know with sewing machines particularly, by the early 1960s, the last all-metal Singers were produced. By the mid-70s, the last all-metal home machines, period, they were made in Japan, those were made, and that was it. And that was the end of vintage sewing machines. But I wanted you guys to see this because, for several reasons. The point, a couple of things. Why do I love fixing sewing machines so much? I'm not much of a sewer. I'm not a fashion designer. I like clothes and I appreciate well-made clothes, you know, and I, just like most of you, I want to find clothes that look nice, that fit me, that I look nice in, but I'm not a clothing person. And, you know, with sewing, I can mend things, I can patch things. If I get a hole in something, I can fix it or patch it, or if something rips. That's it. I do not sew garments, and you would not want to hire me to sew clothing for you. You would not like how you looked in the mirror if you had any kind of clothing that I made for you. So those of you who are good sewers and who can make clothing, I am in awe of you. I know many of you watch my channel looking for advice on machines. Well, Believe me, I don't even think videos could teach me how to sew. I really am in awe of those of you who sew. But anyway, again, the purpose of this is to explain why I was drawn to vintage sewing machines. And it's because of how they were made. The quality that went into them is gone. It's gone forever. I mean, well, not forever, maybe not. I hope not. But it's gone for now. And we'll see what the future holds. But right now, you can't buy consumer-grade appliances like vintage sewing machines or stand mixers or televisions or anything else that will last. And I've just always been fascinated. Now, when I saw this, I love the styling, right? It has kind of a, it's not really Art Deco, but it's a, it's a 1940s look to it. Yes, that's fine. But I love the styling of a lot of items. I love the styling of my, my MacBook Pro here, my laptop. It's new, but it won't last. It's not going to be around in 75 years. It'll have been recycled probably several times over. So part of what I wanted to say here is that I love vintage sewing machines for the same reason I like other vintage things. Sometimes I love the aesthetic, like with this. Sometimes I don't, but that's not the point. It's the fact that they were made so well that if you service them, you can get extremely long lives out of them. Will it last forever? No. But what an amazing thing to have. So anyway, the story on this mixer is I bought this. And like some of you who buy vintage sewing machines, or maybe you inherit one, maybe you may have inherited a mixer, who knows. You get this thing, and it's kind of running, or maybe not, and then it stops. And you don't want to throw it away. You're going to look for someone to service it, and you're not sure what the heck am I going to do, but you don't want to toss it. I bought this thing 10 years ago on eBay, and I got it home. I made 1 or 2 cakes with it, and then it just started slowing down, and it wouldn't run anymore. I mean, it wasn't locked up, but you could tell something was wrong. And I'm like, really? Darn. And I thought, man, I bought it, and it wasn't cheap, and I had to pay to have it shipped. And by the way, I don't do that anymore. I don't buy vintage sewing machines online and have them shipped to me anymore. And I don't ship out. Thank you to those of you who've offered to buy machines for me. And you're all over the world and you've asked me to ship them to you. But I don't because I'm worried they have about a 50% chance of being destroyed in shipping. It's very difficult because they're so heavy. They're costly to pack. And you're really relying on the shipper. And they'll just pay an insurance claim. And then, another machine is ruined. So I don't do it. Although I do appreciate the offers. I truly do. But anyway, so the other reason for this video is that many of you, when you watch my videos, you may see me doing things. You think, oh, he makes it look easy. It's not. But I've been doing it for 9 years. And so some of the machines, I'm very efficient. I know what to look for. I know what to do. And, it takes hours, but I'm efficient at it. Well, that's not the case with this. And so I wanted you guys to see how I began to learn to work on sewing machines because I have never worked on I've never worked on anything but sewing machines, to be honest, except when I tinker with my car. And so I've never worked on a stand mixer. I know nothing about them. They have very little in common with vintage sewing machines other than the fact that they're beautifully made and very well engineered. But I wanted to show you, basically, I'm basically kind of going out into the wilderness here, like many of you with your first vintage sewing machine. And again, I'm not changing my channel. It's not going to change names, and I'm not changing the focus. So, sewing machines, vintage sewing machines are the focus of my channel, and will continue to be. Because I have no idea how long it's going to take me to do this. But again, the process for, say, you own something, right? And this thing is unplugged, just like a vintage sewing machine. It is unplugged, and it will stay that way until I'm done, and I want to test it. So, what do? Let's say you are trying to learn how to overhaul a sewing machine. Some of you have watched my channel, and there are other channels that have information on this. Well, I did the same thing a few days ago. I drug this thing out. I've been hauling it around for 10 years, and I was like, you know what? It's time. I either need to get this overhauled and get it to work, or find it a new home. Sell it to someone who can deal with it. But I really like cooking, baking in particular, and so I am going to do my best. I'm going to give it my best shot, see if I can figure out what's wrong with it, and see if I can repair it. Now, This machine was made in 1946. It is a Kitchenaid 3B, be like Bravo, model. And Kitchenaid as a brand was originally introduced as a consumer grade brand by a company that made restaurant equipment. That company is called Hobart, H-O-B-A-R-T. They are still in business. They still make restaurant equipment. But in 1986, they sold this, which is the division. It's actually on this plate here. It says Hobart, no, excuse me, it says Kitchenaid Division, Hobart Corporation, Troy, I think it's Troy, Ohio. And today, Kitchenaid mixers are made, well, they're assembled in Troy, Ohio. In 1986, Hobart sold the Kitchenaid brand and the mixer division to Whirlpool. And many of you know Whirlpool. They're a giant maker of home appliances, mostly large home appliances for your kitchen and laundry. And some of you have the newer mixers. I have a friend who has one. I think they got it at Williams-Sonoma 30 years ago, and it runs great. Okay, and for a lot of purposes, people like new KitchenAids, but they're not made the same. KitchenAid does have, the Whirlpool KitchenAid has a commercial version with steel gears. They're about $1,000. I'm surprised they're not even more than that. But these, the original KitchenAids that were made by Hobart through 1986, they are all steel. They don't have plastic gears, and they don't have cheap, crappy motors in them. They are the real deal, and that's why I wanted it. So, I just told you guys, I don't know squat about stand mixers. I really don't. All I know, the only thing I've found so far that is similar to all these vintage sewing machines you guys have heard me talking about, and what have I had my channel 4 or 5 years now, is brushes, because of course electric motors you need to be able to access the brush. These are brush caps. Now I'm not going through, I'm not going to go through and disassemble and show you the mixer and talk about the parts, because I can't teach you guys how to fix a vintage mixer because I don't know how yet. I know more about the sewing machines, although you never, my God, I learn every day about vintage sewing machines, so you'll never stop learning. There will always be something new, something that makes you go, wow, I had no idea. But with this is, think of it as a blank canvas. So, what process do I use? Well, it's the same process that many of you use when you're trying to figure out how to fix a vintage sewing machine. And it's basically, I've had people ask me, hey, how did you start learning this? How did you get into it? Well, I did the same thing many of you do. I went online. I started looking at a lot of blogs. There are many blogs. You know, many of us go straight to YouTube, and I understand why. It's very convenient, and you know, it's informative in a way that a blog isn't, but you can get a lot of valuable information from sewing machine blogs, restoration blogs, so be sure to check those, because there's a lot of detailed info, and I learned a lot from those blogs. I still do. I still go to them. But you can go to YouTube. And what did I do? I started searching YouTube for channels. I found this one, and there are others. Again, don't limit yourself. This is called Vintage Mixers and More. And it was set up by a gentleman who's just amazing. He's done a number of vintage mixer repairs, and I think he's actually quite mechanically inclined. He works on a lot of things. But on this channel, he works on mixers, different brands, not just KitchenAids. And now he takes his entirely apart, and then most of them, I think maybe all of them, they get powder coated and resprayed. He paints them in whatever color the customer wants. So he's doing like a body off frame. It's like a ground up restoration if you want yours painted. I'm not going to do that. In fact, the paint on this one of the reasons I bought it and paid for it, because the paint is gorgeous. It's almost perfect, which you almost never see in a kitchen appliance that's 75 years old. But what am I doing? If you look at you can see my laptop screen here, and you can see I'm following along with him, right? I'll turn it on here. You can hear it.
Perfectly fine. It didn't show that there was anything wrong.
Right, and he's actually talking about something else, but he's showing you. Sometimes he describes what he's doing, but that's okay. I'm learning a lot just watching him, and so and that's the same model. Now, mixers are like sewing machines; they vary in age and features and design, so you can't, not everything applies. So, and let me zoom in here. You guys can see even the lettering on the handle is beautiful. This machine aesthetically is gorgeous. And you'll see it, guys. It says Hobart Manufacturing Company, Troy, Ohio. Okay? Now, before I pick on Whirlpool too much, Whirlpool had a time period where they, like every other company that makes consumer items, they started pulling costs out. They started replacing metal gears with plastic gears. Sometimes they use a plastic gear as what they call a sacrificial gear to save the motor and so forth. But there are other areas where they cheapen the machine. And it's unfortunate. But, again, companies make decisions on, trying to keep the price from going up and up. And today, if you buy a new Kitchenaid mixer, it will say assembled, designed and assembled in Troy, Ohio. And give them credit. They could have shipped it all over to China and they could all just come straight from there. At least they're assembling them in Troy. I'll give them that, right? And Whirlpool actually assembles a number of their their larger appliances in the U.S. Not all of them, you got to check. And they're a global company. But anyway, the point here is not to really go off on Whirlpool about that, because most companies have done this. I wish they wouldn't, and I think the future may be different, but that's for another day and another video. So you see, this is the little cap for the differential gear. Many of you who have Kitchenaids know you have all kinds of attachments, right? So there's a worm gear in here that connects to the main gear. You can run everything from a pasta maker to a slicer, and if you're not sure what I'm talking about, just go to Kitchenaid's website and you'll see all these wonderful attachments that you can use. Now, so I've been going and following along with this guy's video, trying to understand, because again, just like with sewing machines, there's certain things you want to be careful of. You don't want to damage anything. You want to be sure that you don't lose any parts, right? So I'm going to show you guys. Basically, I've been following along. I watched this video, but I went back to set it here so you guys could see it where it was, right? And I don't know that I'm going to cover the restoration of this, because again, I am doing this for the first time. I have to emphasize to you guys, for the first time, okay? So I'm not really in a position to really instruct or give advice. But I wanted you to see me do this because, it always seems so odd. You see somebody on YouTube and they have a certain level of expertise and they can show you, hey, I've been doing this 9 years, like I always talk about. And this is what you do. And you say, well, how did you learn this? Did you go to school for it? No. Just did it for 9 years, and I went to YouTube and to blogs and eventually learned to where I created my own channel. But again, it doesn't matter. I want to encourage those of you who are afraid to try this. Okay? It's okay. You can try to fix something. And if you screw it up, put it back together. Take pictures, by the way. Use your phone and take pictures and remember where things are. Keep things together, right? It's when you don't do that that you can really get yourself in trouble, and that certainly can happen with a vintage sewing machine. So I'm watching the video of this guy, and he's showing, you turn this. I'm like, okay, now I'm lucky, right? This is coming. There's a washer on this thing. I don't want to lose it, and I don't want to have to remember where it goes. So I'm going to keep this together. You guys can see this. I got the washer, and there's like 2 washers on this little screw, right? And I can already tell the quality of the steel here. It's just like the quality of those Singer. You guys have heard me go on and on my nerdy description of Singer screws, right? Got to keep this. I'm on my workbench here, so I got to keep it separate from my sewing screws. I can get confused myself. But, and this piece, according to the video.
So, she decided to send me to a couple specialists.
He's not actually describing, he's telling another story. So to make that less confusing, so he takes this out. Now he's going to try to get this off. So I've got my other screwdriver here. And I'm being very careful here, guys, because the paint, I don't want to scratch the paint. My God, this thing made it for 75 years. And now this guy who's trying to overhaul it's going to ruin the paint? I hope not. So I'm going to be extra careful. And of course, with the parts on these things, they're a lot like sewing machines. They've been, any part that was designed to be maintenanced or taken apart, if it hasn't, things get stuck because they've been sitting for a long time. So I'm just going to go around like, he's faster because he's done it before and he's really good at it. And I really appreciate his videos, because if I couldn't find videos like this, I would be almost like afraid to touch it. Oh, I'm going to hurt it. But I don't have to worry about that because, he's making it like, it's all right. Don't be scared. Get in there and try. So we'll try to pull this off. without breaking anything. There we go. Okay. Now, I have seen him take parts of these mixers. I've been watching different videos, and the original grease that was used by Kitchenaid is really old. And many of you have asked me before, what is the big deal with grease and why do you have to replace it? Grease lasts for a long time, but grease is essentially an oil with a solid mixed in, right? Think you have oil and you throw in flour. Grease is not made with flour, although there's probably flour in here that's gotten from a cloud of flour from all these years of making cakes. But grease has, I don't know what the ingredients are, but grease has oil and a solid that gives it its thickness. Well, over the years, it starts to separate, right? It's kind of an emulsion that comes apart. And when it does, it doesn't function. I'm hoping that when I get in here into this machine, that the issue is primarily the grease. I don't know if that's the case. It could be grease that's all hardened and balled up and slowing the machine down, or it could have other problems. But it's just like that with sewing machine, guys. You know, you don't really know. So one of the things he will do, he's going to take, there's a screw on top, the screw and the washer come off, and this little gear comes out, and then there's this little piece that you see me turning, that whole piece will come out, right? And once it comes out, you can take it out and clean it. So we'll see how that goes. By the way, all of this old grease is going to have to come out of here. You can see it. It's all icky. I think that's a childhood phrase. Icky. And needs to come out. I don't know that this specific area of grease is what's causing the problem. Nevertheless, we're gonna do our best shot fixing that. So I'm gonna turn. I'm gonna have to hold something still here because I've gotta hold this while I try to turn this screw and not damage anything. Again, it's all steel. I think I'm gonna need something else to hold it still because it wants to turn on me. Who knows? It may have left the factory in 1946 and not been loosened since. Oh yeah, I'm going to need something stronger to hold on to this. So we'll see about getting something to... So one of the things that, you know, I was going through, you can see in the background there, he has different videos on this same mixer model, and I'm looking for a specific question I have. So you have to hunt around, look in the videos which video shows what, because I need to hold this side still. I've got the vice grips on it, but I don't want to cause harm or injure or damage anything in the process of trying to fix it. So again, like many of you, the first time you touch a sewing machine, certain parts are more, or you can be more bold with than others. Others you have to be careful with, right? So I'm going to hold with the vice grip. I'm going to try to turn this screw and see if it'll turn on me. Oh, there it goes. Ah, yay, it turned. You would hope it's been drowning in grease since 1946. So again, I'm going to take the screw along with its washer and keep them together. They do not need to be separated, right? I'm going to keep, the washer and the screw are going to stay together. And I have to remember which screw fits in where. And so I'm going to, I think I have actually 2 washers on there. The point is to take it together, to keep them together. So I want to set this down without damaging anything, hopefully. And of course, I need to get my gloves on because I got all this nasty old grease. Not fun to have all over you. So I'm going to set that down. And then I'm going to let the vice grip go without dropping this, right? So I gotta figure out how to do that. There we go. Now, and I didn't hurt anything. I didn't scratch anything, which is nice. Everything's moving. Now, I can take the little gear off, just like he did. I think I'm doing this right. Let's see, I think he used, again, a lot of times when you're first learning something, and again, I'm literally just learning this, guys, so you're you're suffering along with me here, I'm going to go back to the videos and keep going back, because sometimes, you know, you can't just memorize it. Some of you might be able to, I can't. So I'm going to see this gear should come up, right? I say should, it does when he does it. Why is it not working for me? Have you guys ever had that when you're trying to do something you see online and you're trying to figure it out? So let's see if it'll come up. And if not, what's holding it up? Remember, it's been sitting on this shaft for a long time. And it's not coming off yet. Here it goes. I think I feel something loosening here. Or is there a pin? There might be a pin holding it on. Right? I think I have to check and make sure there's no pin. Because if there's a pin, then I'm going to be fighting, right? Remember what I've told you guys about sewing machine knobs and how you have to be careful, because you don't know what you're trying to take apart, or in the case of a knob, you're just trying to use it and you don't really know for sure how something comes apart or how it goes back together, and you don't want to injure it. So you take your time, right? If I'm not sure, you know, if this is not going to come off, there it goes. Okay, so I don't see a pin on this. Oh, here we go. Aha! The pin is underneath the gear, and you can see on the bottom of the gear it has a space for that little pin that goes through the shaft here, right? So that's how, when you put the pin back in, and then the gear seats with the pin in place. I think he mentions it in one of the videos, but I thought the gear, maybe the pin was above the gear. But again, you're just kind of fumbling around. You know, you fumble around until you get it. But again, be patient. Don't be in a hurry. If I was in a hurry, I could have caused problems here. Now there's that tiny little pin. Now I got to pull the pin out with my needle nose pliers, because I don't think my fat fingers will get in there. And I don't want to lose this pin, okay? Because this thing was engineered to use it. So I'm going to take the pin, okay? And I'm going to carefully, not damage or anything. It's smaller than the other pin, but I'm going to keep this pin. Let me set this down. There's two hands here and one camera. So I'm going to take the pin and I'm going to keep it with the screw that's going to hold that gear down when we go to reassemble it, right? Now I can try to take out, and I hope, yeah, there's a lot of good lubrication here, and out she comes. Look at this, guys. Look at the quality. Look at that steel. Unbelievable. Just amazing. You can see how it was machined. That's not cast. That's a machined piece of steel. Oh my God. Just incredible, right? We know how it goes. Now it's lubed, but I'll probably take it and clean it, right? I'm going to take and clean, and then I'll put new grease in its place. But there we go. You know, we've gotten that far. If you're working on a sewing machine and you've gotten that far, congratulations, because you're doing something again. You want to not be afraid, but you want to be cautious. Go with intention. You get in a hurry, you're going to have all kinds of problems and issues. Now, the next thing he did is in his video, wake up, computer, okay, in one of the 3B videos, he goes and he takes out these screws. And mercifully, they're coming right off. I didn't have to fight it, and even have to break out my, you guys know I use those screwdriver tips for my machines. And anytime a screw fights with me, I'm going to go to the tips, because I don't want to strip the screw. I didn't mind using a traditional screwdriver because, well, you know, if it's turning easily, it's not a problem. And I suspect it's all this grease that is making this not just completely onerous as a procedure. And let's look, there are 4. By the way, for those of you who are not familiar with Kitchenaids, Kitchenaid, I don't know if they were the first consumer mixer to do this, but they've always been known for what's called an orbital movement pattern. They have what's called a planetary gear set, because when you turn on the mixer, not only does the whisk, for example, this piece, not only does it go in a circle, not only does it spin, but it also moves around the bowl, which is one of its, I guess, claim to fame features. I'm sure there are other brands that do it. I think Sears once sold a mixer called the Kenwood. I think they were made in England, and the old ones were made really well. The new ones, not so much. No surprise, if it's a consumer grade item, you know what? Very few things are made like they once were. Manufacturers will always say to you, well, people aren't willing to pay, but I think it's more complicated than that. Okay, so we get to here, and in one of the videos, now again, he did several videos with the 3B model. I got to find which one it was. I can't remember. He had one where someone had painted it and it was sealed shut. And the reason that's useful to look at is because I'll turn the volume off for a minute. Because this piece has to come out. The screws are removed, but the old grease and oil can act, no surprise, it creates a varnish just like vintage sewing machines where parts get stuck. You remember, guys, I've told you how old oil can act like a glue when it's gotten thick and sticky over the years? Now, he uses, and I can't remember if this is the video, I don't know that this is the video where he did it, but if not, I'm going to have to find it. He got this one loose. There, no, this is the video. Haha. So just like you guys, I'm having to hunt around to find which video was what. Now he shows a heat gun, right? Let me zoom in so you can see what he's doing. He's using a heat gun, right, to soften up the old grease and oil. But you have to be careful. Just like with vintage sewing machines I've shown you guys, you can damage the machine, you can damage the paint. He mentions you can even cause harm to some of the steel in here because, I know he says something about air pockets, that the heat can cause problems. So you have to be careful. So right now, there have been other, oh, there's a pin here I wanted to show you guys. There's a pin in this piece, and of course it comes out as well. It's a larger pin. Now, this should come out, right? But it's stuck. Now, he has taken his vice grips and he's, you know, grabbed a hold of different places. Do you grab it here? Oh, I don't want to hurt the teeth on this gear, that beautiful steel. What about here? What about up here? Maybe up here. And I actually, when I go to try to get this off by grabbing it here, see if I can get the right. You guys know how vice grips are if you've never used them. They're wonderful tools, but you got to figure out what's the happy place. And I'm pulling, and I can't get mine loose, and I don't want to damage it. So I'm going to have to take a heat gun. And you guys know how cautious I always mention we have to be with heat guns. You don't want to burn yourself. They get extremely hot, dangerously hot if you're not careful. And you can damage any number of things if you apply too much heat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply heat, and I don't want to damage this beautiful paint because heat guns will bake the paint and curl it right off. If you've ever used one of these, you know how powerful they are. So I've got on the lower setting. I'm going to try to just put some heat on here, and I've got to be real careful. Right? I'm not going to bake it until it gets super hot. I could damage the paint, also damage the machine. I definitely don't want to do that. I've come this far, right? Now you guys know that when you're trying to unstick a sewing machine, that one of the things you do, and I think I mentioned this once in a necky, if you apply heat and the heat doesn't immediately help something let go, you leave it sit for a while and then you come back to it. I'm still doing that with that Bernina machine I'm working on. And it still has not let go. I have not been able to unlock that decorative stitch mechanism yet, right? Now, you'll notice as the heat comes on here and gets absorbed in the machine, it may cause the grease to soften and, you know, melt a bit. That's normal. So you want to have rags below when you're doing anything. Sewing machines, you really got to be prepared for that, right? So I'm trying to warm this up, but I don't need to bake it. I don't want to hurt it. Don't want to crack the steel, which, according to the gentleman whose channel I was watching, that can happen. He said something about the air can create pressure. I don't fully understand what he said, but I'm going to take him at his. I'm going to take his advice because he knows more about these than I do. And it wouldn't take much because I know nothing about stand mixers. But I want to save it. I want to rescue it. And this is like the first sewing machine I ever worked on, right? It's just tough. Okay. Now I've applied some heat, right? Gotten it warm. I'm going to try this one more time. If I can pull it off. It may come off, and if it doesn't, I'm going to have to wait. Patience, again, is everything. Oh man, it will not budge. So, I'm not giving up, but what I am doing is I'm not going to rush it. I'm not going to force it. What am I going to do? I'm going to step away from it for a while. I'm going to let that heat do its thing, see if it can create any magic for me to get this thing loose. And if it doesn't, if I come back after it's cooled and it won't let go, I'll try again, right? I'll add more heat. Remember, you guys have seen me do this with sewing machines. You add heat, sometimes you add penetrant or oils. I don't need penetrant here. I've got plenty of lubrication. I just have old thick grease. But again, you don't want to harm it, but if you're patient and you keep trying, fingers crossed here, you know, I want to make a cake. I'm determined to try this. And if I fail, it's okay, because there are other mixers in the world. But again, I wanted to use this to kind of show you guys, if you have a sewing machine that is stuck, and if you're using heat to help loosen it, be careful, be gentle, and it's better to come back in small doses than to try to fry the thing and just, you know, don't get in a fight with your machine, because you will lose. You will damage it in some way, and it will be unhappy, and you will be unhappy. And so I'm going to let that sit. I appreciate all of you watching. And again, I'm not really in a position to teach anything about mixers, but I wanted you guys to see what it's like. And this brings back memories. The first sewing machine I ever restored, I had to just look up videos and take my time and trial and error. And eventually you learn how to do it. So if you have something you want to keep, you want to make it run again and no one will help you, you can't find a service center, well, what do you got to lose? Just keep it unplugged. Okay, don't plug it in, and we'll see what we can do with this old girl. And but again, it's about taking a machine that was designed for service. It's gone years without it, which is one of the reasons we're having this problem, and trying to rescue it, give it the service, wake it up, get it to wake up, and see what comes of it. So again, guys, thanks for watching. I wanted to show you something different, but the purpose of showing you a mixer is not that all you guys are clamoring onto my channel to figure out how to fix old mixers. Many of you don't even have them maybe, but to let you know it's okay when you're starting for the first time. Go online and look at channels, whether it's my channel or another channel, and you know, if it's yours and you own it, you know, practice makes perfect, right? And if you're patient and you're not in a hurry, who knows? Maybe you'll be able to restore all kinds of things in your house, in addition to sewing machines. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for subscribing to my channel. If you have not, please feel free to do so. I would love to have you as a subscriber, and you can set up a notification with YouTube when I post a new video. Take care, everyone, and stay safe.